Welcome to Nights of the Storm. Today is Saturday, February 7th, 2026. I'm Karen, your host today. It's great to see everybody in the chat, and our thanks to all the listeners now and in the future. And I have my co-host Ashley with us today. Good morning, Ashley. Good afternoon. And Jason Barker is a little bit under the weather, but he's behind the scenes, pressing buttons and sitting with us in the background. He's pretty stuffy. So great to have Jason with us today. Feel better. And we're so honored to have our guest today, Richard Hirschman, who is an embalmer, a whistleblower, featured in the documentary Died Suddenly, doing a lot of great work. So it's really great to have you with us this morning. We're honored to have you.
Well, thank you.
So would you like to go a little bit into your background? And then I thought it would be a good idea to give some, just a bit of an explanation about how embalming works and how you stumbled upon the clots that you have talked so much about.
Sure. Just, I guess, a little bit of background about myself. I was in the Army for 10 years. I got out of the Army in 97. I ended up working for a sign company for a while. Then my wife got involved working in the funeral business, and I found her work fascinating. So I thought, well, I'll quit my job there and get into the funeral business, which then led me into seeing what embalming was, seeing the benefits of what funeral homes do. A lot of people don't realize what funeral homes do. They just think it's a place where you just spend a lot of money, but there's a lot more to it. And so they get a bad rap, but I got an inside thing. And of course, during, when I first got in there, I saw, there's always bad apples in every line of work, and you see something, and because it was somebody else that did it, you can't undo what they've done. And so I thought, well, you know what, I'm gonna put myself in a position to where I can do something about it. So I moved into getting an apprenticeship of apprenticing funeral director and embalmer, and that was back in 2001. And then, of course, work that apprenticeship, go to mortuary school, get fully licensed, take my national board exams, and become a fully dual licensed mortician. So anyway, I've been doing this for a long, long time. I did take one little pause and got a little bit into aviation, and but continued to do what we call trade embalming on the side. So on the side, when I wasn't working at the airport or on airplanes, I would go to different funeral homes when they, needed some help with the embalming, because that was my passion. My passion was taking care of the deceased, and I call it kind of preparing the canvas, so to speak, to take a person that is no longer with us. And sometimes death can be not so pretty. It can be actually quite ugly sometimes. And so I prepare the body, doing the embalming, and get everything lined up. So that way, when the funeral directors get in there, they can finish off the work by adding just a little bit of cosmetics and, put that person in a casket. That way the family has a much more pleasant farewell to their loved one. And a lot of people don't think that's very important. But I'm here to tell you, it really is on a psychological level. Uh, Unfortunately, in today's world, people are leaning more and more towards cremation and what we call a direct cremation. And that is, the family doesn't even see their loved one anymore. They go straight to the funeral home, minimal preparation is done, and then they're cremated, and then they get their ashes in a box. Um, and they miss out on the service. And I feel like it's very important to have the service. And it really hit close to home because just before Christmas this last year, 2 days before Christmas, my mom died. And so I cared for my mom, and that last week, me and my sister and family, we were there with her and going through all of this. And then, when actually it was at a funeral home embalming, and I get a phone call from my wife saying, you need to hurry up and get back. And unfortunately, I missed it by about 15 minutes. But it's okay, because if I wasn't there, it was God's plan for me not to be there. So I don't have any regrets. But we ended up, I knew my mother wanted to be cremated, which I don't have a problem with cremation at all. However, I ended up going through the whole process. I ended up embalming my mom and dressing, casketing, get everything. We had a full service. And I'll I know it's expensive, but it was worth every penny, because you won't have the regret of, I wish I would have done this instead of going that route. And so we were able to have a full service with my mom present, where people were able to come and say their goodbyes. And it was small and private in a way, but it was beautiful. So anyway, so as you was asking me a little bit about the embalming process, and you'd like to kind of get an idea what that's like or what that entails. And a lot of people don't know it, but the embalming process is a simple process where we open up, or we lift up, we take a vein and an artery. A lot of times, most morticians will use the carotid or the jugular vein. We have vessels in the arm, the axillary or the brachial, major arteries, and they're right next to a major artery is going to be a major vein. So we lift up. The artery is white and rubbery looking. It's kind of stretchy. The vein is very thin. It's kind of it's almost translucent. You can almost see through it. But what we do is we raise the artery in the vein, and we have a tank, and it depends on the type of machine they have. They've got different sizes, but the tanks that I typically use hold about 3 to 3.5 gallons of water, and we mix water with chemicals, formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, embalming chemicals, and those embalming chemicals have preservatives in it, and they have dyes to kind of help, take some of because sometimes when people die, they get a really strange color to them. Sometimes they become very purple. Sometimes they become kind of grayish looking, whatever, these different colors. And so we pump the fluid into the artery. And as that builds up pressure into the artery, we open up the veins, so that way the blood that's in the system starts to come out. It just flows. It's almost like if you were going to flush your radiator of your car. You can't put but so much fluid in there unless you have an area where you allow the fluid to escape. So so that's basically what the embalming process is. Simply removing or pumping in a preservative fluid with dyes and chemicals to help the body have a much more natural state or look. It fixates some proteins, which makes them kind of firm. That's why when people go to the funeral home and they touch their loved one, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, most of the time, the body, the flesh is firm to the touch. It almost feels hard. And that's the fixation of the formaldehyde that is what is doing that. And now that does is it slows down decomposition, because if you do not embalm, and the embalming is typically not required by law, unless you plan on having a public viewing and all that kind of stuff. But if you do not embalm, there's no telling how long that body is going to last. And people have this idea that, oh, well, why we got to embalm? Well, I mean, have you been on the highway and come across an animal that had been hit by a car, and you happen to be close to it and you see the flies and the bloating and the awful stench? Well, that happens to humans too. So embalming process slows that down so that you can have a viewing and a public service. It just slows that system down. So, and some people decompose at different rates, where sometimes, people say, well, how long do I have to decide whether I need to embalm? And the answer is, it just depends, because with today's medications that people are on, there's no telling how long. Because some of the chemicals and the medications they put people on are so strong, it can literally cause the body to start breaking down much more quickly than people that haven't been on those medications.
Wow, that is interesting. I've never heard anybody make that comment, but it absolutely makes sense. For example, I know quite a few people who are taking anticoagulants. And I'm sure that there are many other things that would have that kind of impact on the body. What you describe in your attitude, the way that you have your heart in what your work, is really touching and beautiful. So I thank you for your kindness and caring for so many people and providing the service that you provide. I've been with several family members in their death and dying process, and I feel like that's a sacred time. And it's an honor to be there, as difficult as it is. And then handing your loved one off to somebody as caring and sensitive as you are is a true blessing. So that's a wonderful way to do it. And I kind of relate in a little bit, because I was a teacher, and I get a lot of flack for being a teacher, that I was in the system. There was nothing of any value I could provide. They're all evil, those evil teachers, the system, then nothing good can come. I beg to differ. Having a loving, caring presence with the children or with your loved ones after they pass, it has an impact. So I kind of see that, because I'm sure that a lot of people would say, oh, morticians, funeral directors, they're just in it for the money. And, there's so much. We need to look at people as individuals and give people the benefit of the doubt and realize that there are a lot of good people out there in the trenches fighting the good fight and making a difference. So I want to thank you for that and for your excellent explanation there. I want to move over to Ashley and see if she has any comments, and let her ask a question. Ashley.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you, Richard, for joining us today. And I'm glad that Karen started there, because I do think it's important to lay the foundation of, what is it that you do? And I so much agree with Karen that this is, whenever we're caring for our loved ones at the end, and then we provide, the service for them in a caring, loving way, that's like our last act to be able to let them know that we love them, that we respect them, that they matter to us. So it is really an important thing. And I think, that you're right. A lot of people don't. And to what Karen was saying, a lot of people don't appreciate these acts of care that many people do in their professional lives, but it's personal to them. So
can I add something real quick?
Of course.
Ashley, in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, and I'm a spiritual kind of guy. It says a man may live 1,000 years twice over, but if he doesn't receive proper burial, a stillborn child is better off than he. And then also, I think it's in the next chapter in Ecclesiastes, it talks about it's better to be in the house of mourning than in the house of feasting. And if you follow along, it's not that feasting is bad, because later on in that chapter, it says, when times are good, be joyful. But why is it better to be in the house of mourning? And I went through this again, recently with my mom, just before Christmas. And it's because when you are in that time of mourning, when you're going through that death process, and the death process doesn't just end when the person dies, it's how you handle how you handle what you want to do with your loved one. And how you want to memorialize them. And so, and I don't, whether you're buried or cremated, to me, I don't think that was the point. Is, are you going to honor your loved one? What matters, there's a great poem that's out there. It's not about the day you were born or the date you die, but that little dash that's in the middle. What is it that people are going to say about you when you die? What are they going to say about your life, and how are they going to come? And if you're so looked down upon that nobody wants to give you any honor, that's kind of a sad thing. So I think we should, as people, look at the dash, and that is where you are right now. Yeah. So how are you going to live your life, and what do you want people to say about you when you're gone? I'm sorry. I wanted to bring up that Ecclesiastes because the Bible talks clearly about honoring the dead.
Yeah, please don't apologize. I think that was perfectly well said and very beautiful, because I do think it's important. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on our show is sort of this dysfunction in society that has been cultivated. And I see what you're talking about as a symptom of that, in a way, of people just kind of rushing that process. And I know that sometimes it may be, that these complex family dynamics and expenses and things like that. So I don't want to just, blanket everything, but I really think that not having a service and just, jumping to the very end, I do think that that is a symptom of kind of where we're at, because it used to be a very big deal to go through the mourning process. And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, is how important, going through this personally, and I know that we've all lost loved ones, in your opinion, having this goodbye to your loved ones, how important do you think that that is for people in their grieving process, and being able to, I don't want to say move on, but to kind of to come to that acceptance points? And if you had experienced people who weren't able to get there because they just skipped it.
Absolutely. That's a great point. It reminds me of a quote. I don't remember exactly who it said, but it was one of my mortuary teachers that's quoted this from somebody else. And that is something like a society that no longer honors the dead is a dying society. And I think that kind of goes into what you were saying, Ashley. We're in I want it and I want it now. We want everything, and nobody wants to feel the pain. No, everybody wants a pill to cover up the pain. And I get it. I hate pain myself. I don't like it. But it is so important that we acknowledge the pain. We feel the pain. We're in that house of mourning. We're in there reflecting on life. And, the beautiful thing is, my mom lived for 77 years. And she was in basically in that last stage process for 8 days. What a wonderful thing. She could have been, there's a blessing that you don't live your whole life in that suffering, in that very last difficult time. But you brought up another question or a point. I have seen people, because back in the day when I was doing both funeral directing and embalming, where I was meeting with families and talking with people and interacting, usually the regrets were, I wished I would have had one last chance to say goodbye to blank. I wished I would have gone down and looked into the casket. Very rarely. And usually when this happens, we morticians and we funeral directors, we know when things are really bad. And we will sometimes recommend to the family, listen, we understand, your loved one was through some difficult times. And my professional opinion would be, it might be better for you to remember him the way he was, as opposed to going down there to look. But it's your loved one. I can't make that decision for you. I'm just going to give you my recommendation. And very rarely do we get the regret of they went down there to view. Even those and I've seen some that were really, really bad. And those families that chose to go down there and face their deceased loved one, they usually don't regret it. But if there is a regret, it was that. Usually it's not the other way around. So it's extremely important. It's a part of the process. You know, you don't learn to run a marathon. You first learn to crawl. Then you got to learn to walk. Then you got to, you take things step by step. And in the dying process and in the funeral business, it is a process. People die. What do you do next? One of the things is you have to face it. And that's where the funeral, that's where the memorialization, again, I'm not against cremation. I personally want to be cremated myself. But I see the importance of the funeral is about honoring the loved one, yes. It's about honoring a life that was lived. But the people that benefit from the funeral isn't the person who died. They're gone. It's the family and friends that are left behind. Those are the ones that are going through the psychological, emotional trauma of losing someone special to them. And it is a process. It's a way to acknowledge the fact mom is gone. I did everything I could to take care of her, and I'm doing everything I can to honor her. And if nobody shows up, it doesn't matter. What matters is, did I do what I felt I needed to do? So, some people are like, oh, well, mom don't have very many friends. Hey, who cares? It's your mom. It's your dad. It's your brother. It's whatever. I see the importance so much that, and again, it kind of takes me back to what you said earlier. And it reminded me of my professor in mortuary school. A society that no longer honors the dead is a dying society. And you see it with the increase of cremation. Right now, there are so many people being cremated with no services at all, nothing. And that's sad to watch.
Very, very well said. Thank you so much for that explanation. And I want to get back to Karen because I'm sure that she has some insight and thoughts on this as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. When my dad died, it was 7 years ago, but that doesn't really matter. I was in the hospital. I was the first one there. I was there with him, and I left to get a few things, and he died while I was gone. But I had the opportunity to sit with him alone for several hours while my brothers came. They got my mother. And so we all sat there in the hospital room with him and for hours. And we knew that he wouldn't want an open casket. And so we did have him cremated, but we did, the immediate family, get to have that chance to sit with him when he died immediately. And it was sort of unexpected. And I say it was a hospital murder myself, but that was before COVID. But then we did have a graveside service, and my brother and sister-in-law own a flower shop. So there were beautiful flowers. We had his fishing creel, and some of his ashes were in the creel. We took some of his ashes and spread them in his favorite fishing rivers. We designed our own headstone for him. That's beautiful. So I think we all honor our loved ones in different ways, and it's important to do that. And I don't think an open casket is required, but if that's what your wishes are and you think that that's great. But we did have that time with my dad.
Yeah. Both my grandparents were cremated. I went up. I wasn't there when my grandfather died, but when my grandmother was dying, I did go up there to help my mom take care of her during her dying days. And I was a mortician at the time, and she was going to be cremated. And yeah, we had a family viewing, a little private family get together. Family was there with her when she died, but also at the funeral home, they will do this for you. Most funeral homes will. Even if they're going to be cremated, they will allow you to go back and have one little final goodbye before they're cremated. And I'm totally cool with that. And it sounds to me like a beautiful thing, what you've done, Karen. And this is what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter whether you're cremated or buried. You guys did all these things to honor him. Mm-hmm. All these little things. And it isn't always necessary that You know, people, I don't want people to look at me when I'm in a casket. Honor their wishes. But, you know, that same person would probably say, I'm okay with my children looking at me. I'm okay with my kids or, you know, some of my very, very close friends, but I don't want to be opened up for the public to come in and gawk at my body. I get that. I totally get that. And so it sounds to me like what you guys have done is a little bit of both, and you made it personal. And that's what's really important, because it's personalization. You did that. You took the ashes, you went and put some of his ashes in some of his favorite rivers that he fished. And it's beautiful. And that's how you honor somebody's life. That's how you honor somebody. It doesn't have to be this big, huge, elaborate, you know, $40,000 funeral with a big mausoleum. It doesn't have to be all that. It could be very, very simple, but beautiful. Well done.
I think it's all about the heart, right?
Yes.
I want to, and of course we want to cover the clots, but just quickly, I wanted to ask what you see. We are seeing the consolidation and corporatization of the funeral home industry, of mortuaries, and I think a huge expansion and consolidation. How is that affecting the process, the ability to honor the dead, how your work personally, perhaps even your ability to speak out about the clots that you're finding, and to be a whistleblower, or to, are you finding, why do you think the move is toward all the consolidation and the huge growth in the funeral home industry, and how is that affecting you, and what are the implications?
Well, that's a touchy subject, and I might sit there and no, it's good. No, I'm never opposed to anything. I think it's wonderful, and these are my views, and it's my opinion. And if people don't like it, well, that's just how it is. And people have different views and opinions, and that's fine. And I've worked both for the corporation, and I've worked for private, family owned, and most of the places that I work now are all private. I do know people that work for more on the corporate level. When it comes to speaking out, they will lose their job. They can't speak out. They can't say anything. So the corporation is kind of like Walmart, how Walmart destroyed a lot of small grocery stores and you know, stuff like that. And you know, it's not that I'm against the corporations, whatever, but what happens is, in my opinion, anytime you start making these big corporations, and there's some big ones, Service Corporation International, SCI, is one of the biggest ones. It's known as Dignity here in the United States and in many countries. Anyway, they care about how much money they make. That's it. That's it. When it's corporate, you lose you might get a good funeral director that's working at a corporation that's going to do whatever he can, but he's limited on what he can do. The prices are dictated by the corporation, the policy, the way they do things, everything is that way. And some people think it's cheaper. Oh, heck, no, it ain't. Most corporations you go to, I mean, their prices are up there. Now, they will compete with some of the locally owned funeral homes and maybe cut you a deal a little bit here or there. And they have all these things, these bells and whistles, they try to sell you on stuff. But for the most part, in the end, what I see is most of that is just a bunch of fluff. What matters most is how you're going to honor your loved one. And but the corporations are making it difficult, because what do corporations have the ability to do? And that is to get lobbyists. And these lobbyists go to your state funeral directors boards, and they lobby for new laws and new regulations. So the corporation has all this red tape they put in place, and then they want to sit there and standardize that across the business. And so they go and lobby for these new laws to be made. The next thing you know, all these smaller funeral homes are being forced to start to follow and comply with all these new laws. And it just makes it more and more difficult for small businesses to stay in business because they make it just difficult. And most of the time, I could be wrong. This is just my opinion, but it seems like most of the time, when the Board of Funeral Service goes around and does their inspections, if they're a corporation, they go through quickly. If they go to a mom and pop place, a little privately owned thing, they're nitpicking and finding them for the littlest of things, creating more and more difficulty for them. Well, why don't they do the same thing with a corporation? Well, because they're in bed with them. That's why they get a lot of funding. They get all these people that are all, again, that's kind of my opinion, but I'm not a big fan of the big corporate funeral services. It takes away the personalization and the dignity, which they call themselves, SCI does, they call themselves Dignity Funeral Services.
I've noticed that.
and like I do work, there's a funeral home that I work for down here. I won't mention their name, but the place is absolutely beautiful. I mean, the cemetery is gorgeous. I mean, I've never seen any place as beautiful as this, and they're privately owned, and they put a ton of money into the facilities. And, because of that, the services that you get at this place are expensive. Okay. But I talked to the owner of that place, just a few months ago. I said, if you ever sold this thing to a corporation, I give it less than 5 to 10 years and this place will be a dump. And he totally agreed. And that's because once they get it, they're going to do the minimal thing they have to get as much money as they want. That's it. It's all about the money.
Yeah, I'm curious if you see this as the death care, quote unquote, system as part of the healthcare system at this point in the insurance industry. I think that the healthcare system has become very vertical, from birth through insurance to death, through hospitals, doctors, pharmacies. It's all integrated. So I'm wondering if the funeral home system is being integrated into that corporate system.
Not that I'm aware of. I understand the idea of that. And we did have during the COVID pandemic, whatever you want to call it, FEMA or whatever it was putting out this thing. And this kind of drove their numbers a little bit, especially when people started catching on. If you can get COVID attached to that death certificate some way or another, that there would be like this $9,000 reimbursement from the federal government. So people were incentivized to put COVID on the death certificate because $9,000 doesn't always cover a funeral these days. As a matter of fact, some of the places I work for, the average cost of a funeral is probably going to be somewhere up around $12,000 to $15,000. So, but $9,000 is a lot of money, and it was just given to people that if there was COVID somewhere on the death certificate, it didn't have to be the main cause of death. It was contributed to COVID. If they could get that word COVID on that death certificate. And I've talked to coroners who actually had family members begging the coroner to put COVID, that they had COVID, even though they died of whatever that they did. They just recently had COVID. Can they put COVID on that death certificate?
Wow, that's incredible. At this point, let's play is it okay with you if we play just a minute or two of the beginning of Died Suddenly, and then we'll transition into that topic?
Sure thing.
Okay.
U.S. life insurance companies have reported an overwhelming and unexplainable increase in all-cause deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds. Along with that, there's also been an increase in certain medical diagnoses, such as miscarriages and Bell's palsy.
Well, when I first started seeing these strange anomalies in the blood, it's just there's something different about the blood. All of these people that were dying, doesn't matter what they died of, they were having this unique there's this unique change in the blood. I feel as though I am seeing something that could be causing their death. No one will see what I see. So in the very beginning, I'm thinking, okay, so COVID could have caused this possibly, but now I'm seeing these in people that supposedly never had COVID. And then you find out they were vaccinated. And so it's like, okay, so I guess the vaccine might be causing this.
I wanted people to understand that we're in a fifth generation warfare.
They now seek the news openly to manipulate and deceive the American population.
Weapons of mass destruction.
But you don't believe in any conspiracy theory?
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Sullivan Brothers building that's collapsed?
Leaf of science.
And we're injecting them in little kids' arms.
An 18-year-old health worker has developed blood clots after
a controversial piece of Bigfoot.
Just days after getting their second COVID-19 vaccine, 2 teenage boys died in their sleep.
Oh my God!
A 9-year-old went to sleep in Eagle Mountain and never woke up.
Little cheerleader who died suddenly. Who knows? Young people are dying these days.
You know, Matt and I are constantly talking about Malthusian theory.
Malthusian theory, I know.
I'm sure you are.
It says it on one of the coffee cups I was given. You know, when I was at junior college, Chabot Junior College, we finished a history course, and the professor wrote up, you need to learn this word. He wrote up the word triage, which represented, I was told, the concept that eventually the world will have too many people in it in order to subsist on its own. And that stuck with me for a long time, and that's what Inferno is about, the quantum physics of overpopulation. In an instant, there could be too many people on the planet Earth, and actually the math does add up.
Just gave us a 20-second definition of Malthusian theory, which is amazing.
Well, that's what I'm built for.
I, Thomas Robert Malthus, have merely done you the service of stating the obvious, that the demographics of our situation equal death.
Reverend Thomas Robert Malthus was a British demographer of the late 1700s and was the first to popularize the idea that there's simply too many people using up too much resources.
How many cars, stereos, fancy bars?
How many people could the world support? Well, it depends. It's a sliding scale.
Malthusian ideology is often summarized in the following graph.
Very simple graphs which project what's going to happen to the planet over the next 150 years if we don't do something drastic to stop it.
It's an ideology, an eschatology.
Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary.
And it spawned a new genre of fear that lasted for generations. The fear of overpopulation.
You have to get the death rate and birth rate in balance, and there's only two ways to do it. One is to bring the birth rate down, the other is to push the death rate up.
If we do not, by humane means, limit our numbers, then numbers are going to be limited by more famines and shortages.
It's reaching plague proportion.
No intelligent, patriotic American family ought to have more than 2 children, preferably 1.
Maybe anybody is.
Okay. Wow, that's quite a 5-minute introduction there. I do have a copy of Died Suddenly, Edward Dowd's book. Just kind of trying to keep a COVID library for posterity to keep some kind of record of the events that we've seen unfolding. So any comments that you want to make about that, Richard, and then go ahead and talk about your introduction to the clots.
There's a researcher, scientist. He's actually a polymer chemist by the name of Greg Harrison in Australia, who's been really a main person in digging into the research and analysis of these clots that I've been finding. He was 100% against the idea of this is some kind of a depopulation agenda. However, within the last several months now, he is almost convinced that this was a bioweapon, and it was a bioweapon, and it was used successfully against the people of this world. And it's disturbing, but he did not want to go down that road. Those gentlemen that did the documentary, they were hammered because they throw the Bigfoot thing and all of these different things. All they were doing was trying to, let's just go ahead and get all this, because they already knew what we were going to be considered a new conspiracy theory. So they were just getting ahead of that and are like, all of these crazy things. Now, some of these things are out there. Why is it you're not allowed to talk about things? We're still allowed to talk about Bigfoot, but these clots that I've been finding, talk about censored. It's major. I don't even hardly use social media anymore because it doesn't get anywhere. Nobody sees it. Very few people will see what I post. Where before I used to get all kinds of views, and maybe they're we believe they're doing it on purpose. That we're being shadow banned. I had a researcher one time talk to me, and he was going to utilize a video that I had posted in one of his papers, and was told that that came from Richard Hirschman, and if you put that in there, this will not even be considered for submission. So we know that censorship is real. It's 100% real, but I'm not worried about it. I can't control it. All I can do is speak when I'm asked to speak. For the most part, I don't hardly do many interviews anymore because I think people are just over it. They're tired of it. But like you say, you got this little thing. I think one day people are going to look back in history and say, what happened? And they're going to find, because that's the beauty about the internet. People download these things and they save these things so that even if they get scrubbed, they still have a copy of it. And they have the ability to be able to bring these things back up. And they'll sit there and they'll look back and they're like, oh, wait, there were doctors like Peter McCullough, Dr. Ryan Cole, Pierre Corey, Ed Dowd, who's not a doctor, but there were people saying, hey, we're seeing something here that don't look right. We're trying to warn people, but they were thrown into this box of conspiracy theorists, and they were shadow banned, and they were called all kinds of horrible things to keep people from listening to them. They're going to look back and they're going to like, oh my God, they were trying to tell us the truth and we didn't listen. But it'll be too late. It'll be too late.
You said a lot there, Jason, who is under the weather today. He talks a lot about how we are throttled as far as our subscription numbers go, and our free. And Elon Musk has said you'll have freedom of speech on his platform, but not freedom of reach. And we've seen that with several of our friends, fellow podcasters, that they get absolutely no views or notifications, no reposting. So we're seeing that constantly, of course. And I'm curious, and this is just a little aside quickly. Were you already skeptical about things before COVID, or was this a complete shock to you that something nefarious may possibly be afoot? Or were you already a bit skeptical of about vaccines and the whole medical agenda? I'm just curious where you stood on that, and then maybe what opened your mind if it was a surprise to you.
Well, for people that want to call me an anti-vaxxer, I didn't really care for the flu vaccines and stuff like that. But, for the prior to COVID, for several years, I listened to my doctor, and I was getting my flu shot. So was I an anti-vaxxer if I was getting my annual flu shot? I maybe make sense. I don't consider that an anti-vaxxer. With the whole thing of the way things were going with the COVID thing, when it first started coming about, there was something that seemed odd to me. That's just, I didn't know what to say of it. I know they started with all the lockdowns, and they were saying that people are dying everywhere, but it wasn't the case really in early of 2020 when they were doing the lockdowns. I remember sitting on the back porch where I had bird feeders. None of those birds were social distancing or wearing masks. None of them. Not one did any of that stuff. And I remember getting called to go to work on a body. And of course, minimal people, on the roads. And I'm driving down the road, and it's like scriptures a lot of times will come into my mind. People don't need to think that I'm some kind of a religious scholar or anything like that. I'm not. I just spiritually something it's my head. But anyway, I'm on my way to go to the funeral home to embalm a person. And the idea is what come into my mind is that scripture says, I did not come to give you a spirit of fear, but of sound mind. Oh, okay. Well, there's other scriptures that came into my mind during that time too. And that was, there will be people that will try to save their lives, but will lose it. And that comes in, one of the main ones that was crazy is after probably, it would have been in 22 or something like that, where we get this person. They were so scared of the virus. They spent the last couple of years of their life not being with their family, locked behind the door, and that's it. They allowed fear to take their life from them. Now, granted, we can all get hit by a car. We go out to the grocery store and die. There's no promise of tomorrow. All we have is today. But this whole idea of the government doing all this, fear mongering about everybody's dying when that's not what I was seeing was crazy. And then people that they were labeling as COVID, like I had one of them that was over 100 years old. That was a COVID death. I didn't have any clotting issues. This was before the vaccines rolled out. But it's just kind of weird how all of these things were going on, and it seems strange. I was not awake to this stuff at that time at all. When the COVID vaccine came out, I was offered a few times to go and get it. Well, the strange thing is around May or June of 2020, my wife thought she had COVID. And so I didn't want her to go to the clinic. So I went ahead because I had, just had a little bit of a cold or whatever. So I got tested too, just so she wouldn't have to be by herself and do it. And I tested positive. And they did not just with that little crap they put down your back of your nose, but they did with a blood test. Both of them came back positive that I had already contracted COVID. I did have a cough that was pretty rough there for a couple of times, but it wasn't like serious. And so when the vaccines came out, they were initially for the elderly and the weak and the vulnerable. Remember? I mean, so when I was offered it, I'm sitting here thinking, well, I already had COVID. I had chicken pox when I was a kid too, so I never got the chicken pox vaccine. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, why would I take a vaccine that might help somebody else? Why would I take one more off of the shelf to give it to myself when I had already recovered from it? I didn't see the point. I was like, well, this is dumb. I mean, I'd rather somebody else that needs it more than me get it. And that was my thought at the time, not thinking anything negative about it. I do remember I do remember this, and maybe you guys will remember. I remember hearing some of those news anchors that were bashing Trump, saying that if a vaccine came out under Trump, they would never take it because it couldn't be safe and effective, because how do you come up with a vaccine that quick? But then as soon as the election was over, and then they announced the vaccine after the election, there was this weird 180 where now everybody needs to get it. And I'm like, what? This is weird. So anyway, I did not think anything negative. I wasn't an anti-vax person. However, at this point in time, I am. You could consider me an anti-vax person. As a matter of fact, I regret ever taking any vaccine, and I definitely regret ever having my children vaccinated, especially after all the work Del Bigtree and his people have done recently. This is awful. I mean, I didn't even realize. I mean, if Donald Trump wants to claim victory with warp speed, it would be this. Through warp speed and through what they did with the COVID and the COVID vaccine, it opened the eyes to the vaccine industry and the big pharmaceutical companies to the point where now people are saying, wait a minute, I know way too many kids with autism. We've been slowly seeing autism rise, and now we're sitting here going, oh my gosh, was it always this whole time? And why is it that in 1986, they exempted pharmaceutical companies from harms due to vaccines? Why do you need, I mean, Del Bigtree and Aaron Siri, they say, why do you need government protection from a product that is totally safe and effective? And if warp speed did anything, it is that. It has woken everybody up to the vaccine industry and the harms that they're actually committing. It's scary. And there's more coming, unfortunately.
Yeah. I was well aware about the whole vaccine agenda. And my husband will tell you, he had orders, strict orders. When the doctor asked him if he wanted a flu shot, he would tell the nurse, I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to take a flu shot. And my daughter was in college in the early mid around 2010 or so, and she'd head off to school. I'd tell her no flu shots because I knew they were pushing flu shots at the college. So thank goodness I was already aware of that. But so many people, even those of us who were somewhat aware, the pressure was incredible. I know my mom ended up getting one shot just because she was a prominent citizen in her little town, and the pressure, she's so honest, she kept wearing a mask because she was supposed to, because she wasn't vaccinated. She was the only person in town wearing a mask after a while, so she ended up getting one COVID shot and developed chronic venous insufficiency, got shingles right away. I mean, her health really went downhill. She's still hanging in there, but I think you're right about the skepticism because she hasn't taken any more shots since then. And she always did get a regular flu shot and has been offered another shingles vaccine after she just had the shingles. And I know she had a shingles vaccine previously. So I want to allow Ashley to get in on this also, but as far as the depopulation agenda goes, I was digging around into things early, maybe 2015 or so, and there's something called Deagle.com and a Deagle report that had these population projections that where the population of most of the Western countries would be cut in half or lower than half. And I always wondered, how on earth are they going to do something like this? But look at where we are. We've lost so many of the elderly. We've had Michelle Spencer on, who talked about the huge miscarriage and stillbirth incidents that we're having. We've got infertility is a huge issue now in the Western countries and around the world. So we've got infertility, we've got sterility, you've got sperm counts that are incredibly low. And I attribute that to many factors, including the EMF saturation that we have from devices, young men sitting laptops right on their lap, and and we know that the EMFs and the cell phones and things and the Wi-Fi has an effect on fertility also. And we saw so many people targeted in the nursing homes, the elderly. I think flu shots have always, we have a friend, Handy, who's a friend of the show, who is an EMT, and he always says that he sees an uptick in elderly deaths after flu shots.
It's funny. I in the funeral business, just typically how it has been for all these years. Remember, I started doing this in 2001. We always attributed the increase in deaths due to the big temperature fluctuations in the winter and in the early spring. Now I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, because it always seemed to get busier from the fall to the spring. And usually during the summer, everything kind of dies off. Was it always right after the flu vaccine or the annual flu shots came out that might have been an underlying trigger? I mean, I can't prove any of that. This is just my speculation. But what you just said, this is just another part. I was not thinking anything about vaccines at all. But it's true what that person told you, that medic told you. Always seems to be an increase after the vaccines roll out.
And then if you look at the ingredients and the side effects listed on the inserts, if you look on the website, the CDC website, the FDA website, they have the side effects listed, and that all of the side effects are side effects that may be the flu or from the pneumonia shots. There's pneumonia symptoms, and then there have been studies done shown that, for example, the military did a study to see if people who got flu shots were less likely to get the flu. Well, they were actually more likely to get respiratory infections if they had a flu shot. So you may be set up for different types of respiratory infections if you get a flu shot, and it's very hit and miss as far as the strains that are included in the flu shot from year to year. My dad died in October, and my working theory is that he had a flu shot and a pneumonia shot, and then he ended up dying of sepsis related to pneumonia, which they couldn't seem to find the pneumonia, but he had sepsis. So I attribute it to the flu shot and then the pneumonia shot that he had just before that. But I want to turn this over to Ashley, and we need to get to the clots eventually.
Yes, well, and that was actually one of my questions was, and you can let me know, Karen, if you're not ready to get there yet for the flow of today's episode, but that was really one of the things. So we talked with Richard about where he was with COVID in general, and just the opinions on that. Of course, I'm assuming you would have recognized this like a very hot political hot potato that you're dealing with, but and I don't know if Karen's ready to get here, but I was wondering, like, if you could walk us through really your first instance of finding anomalies.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. All right, cool. Because I was wondering, like, I feel like, honestly, it could be like the beginning of Jurassic Park, it like having this major revelation about something weird is going on. And I know that you address it and died suddenly, but I didn't know what the process was, or like how long it took you to get to, I think this is associated with the vaccine. So if you could maybe tell us a little bit about that and how you were feeling personally in finding something really bizarre in one of the bodies that you were working on.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'll do my best to try to break that down. I will have to say that just prior to the vaccines rolling out, I was noticing an increase in clotting issues, just typical clotting. Now, regular blood clots are red and jelly-like. I know some people don't like me to use this analogy, but women understand clots a whole lot better because you go through a menstrual period time. So you deal with that, where most men, they don't. They might go hunting or whatever, and they kill a deer, and then they notice how the blood kind of kind of sticks together sometimes after it's just sitting and is drying up or whatever, creates clots. So that's blood clots are red because it's full of blood, right? And they're jelly-like. They literally look like grape jelly. Now, sometimes you can have some clots that are a little bit more gelatinous in a way where it kind of sticks together more, but they're still generally just blood and they fall apart pretty simply. So, but I did notice an increase in clotting towards the end of 2020. Then, when the vaccines rolled out, it got stupid busy. I mean, I got so busy that it was just, I was having a hard time getting any sleep. I mean, it was crazy. It seemed like people were dying everywhere, and mostly the elderly. Okay. Now again, it's still that way today. Generally, it's the elderly that are affected the most. But it was really, really busy, and the clotting went from an increase to, holy smokes, what in the world? Why is it that all of these bodies all of a sudden are so clotted up? Now in January, I wasn't noticing the white fibrous clots. I was just noticing a huge amount of clotting. Then there was a time I was embalming this person. I was having issues getting fluid down one of the arms, and so I had to raise the axillary or brachial artery to push fluid to get down into the hand. And when I cut into the artery, I pulled out this long white looking clot. This is not a very good one, but something like this, except for this has got a lot of blood that's still attached to it. That's why it's really gray. But I pulled something like that out of this person's arm. And I was like, holy smokes. Now, when I actually saw that, I didn't write the date down. I don't remember the exact date. Was it in February? Was it in March? Was it in April? I don't remember the exact date. I just know that it was probably early spring. So somewhere around March, April. I know it was before June. So, but whatever. So I saw it. And the reason why I didn't really think anything of it was, well, you can run across an anomaly sometimes that's very odd or very unusual. So when I first saw that white clot, I was like, holy smokes. And I showed it to somebody. I was like, look at this. This is really weird. And of course, I wasn't thinking nothing about saving any of these samples or anything like that, because it was the first time I recognized seeing this strange white clot that came out of an artery in somebody's arm, which arteries are an area of the body when we cut into the artery, there's usually no blood in there. Usually all the blood is in the venous side. I don't exactly totally understand why that is, but it is. The pressure side is the artery. The return side is the vein. But it was in the artery, and I found that to be really strange. And so, of course, I just, wow, that's weird. And I moved along, and I didn't think nothing of it after that. It was not a big deal. Next thing you know, I saw it again. And then, wow, that's weird. Now I've seen this a couple of times. And then, next thing you know, I see it again. And what started happening is I started to see this more and more often. And it was in early 2021. It's kind of like in the documentary. Now, understand that documentary was done in 2022. There's a lot that I have learned since then. And there are probably some things that could change in that documentary had I known then what I know now. But, that was then. And I only knew what I knew. And, but that when you start to see something happening over and over again, at first you sit there and you realize, okay, so they were starting off, you guys might remember this. You started hearing, it was in early 2021, they were starting to say, oh, COVID was a clotting disease. they started saying COVID was a clotting disease, that it caused clots, which is fascinating, right? And so, okay, all right. Well, that would explain why, you know, in 2020, when we started noticing an increase in clotting, there might have been an issue. But I didn't see these white things in 2020. I saw them starting in 2021. So then you guys might remember all of these stories of athletes and young people having blood clots. They started popping up when? In 2021. And it's interesting because I got a copy of this paper right here, and I don't have the whole thing. But this one here was a preprint, October 13th, 2021, and it says SARS-CoV-2 spike protein induces abnormal inflammatory blood clots. Huh. So they knew, and wasn't that during when they were pushing mandates? I'm sorry. I just think that's kind of strange. But then I found some of these other papers. This one here is from the New England Journal of Medicine, published August 11th of 2021. Clinical features of vaccine-induced immune thrombocytopenia and thrombosis. Well, thrombocytopenia and thrombosis are blood clots in layman's terms. Then I run across this one here from the American College of Cardiology. Vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, VITT, and COVID-19 vaccines. What cardiovascular clinicians need to know. Oh, I don't know if you can see the date on there. June 8th, 2021.
Richard, and I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you, what was the trigger really for you to start digging for this information? Was this like, I'm starting to find the clots, now I'm starting to make some associations, now I'm going to be digging?
Yeah, well, what started to happen was, as I'm seeing more and more of these clots and these strange clots, I'm asking other coworkers, I'm asking other people in my business, are you guys seeing this stuff too? And then I'm trying to dig into, you know, because everybody's heard of deep vein thrombosis, typically DVTs, deep vein thrombosis. And so I wanted to get a better understanding on clotting. Now, I'm a mortician. I deal with the draining of blood, basically pumping in a fluid and allowing the blood to drain out on a regular basis. I do that. That's what I do. And so I'm very familiar with clotting, and I understand that blood clots are a thing that happen. We have products that chemical companies sell us so that we can help reduce the issues of clotting. So I'm very familiar with clots, but I wanted to get a deeper understanding. What is going on? And if you guys remember in 2021, as you guys were hearing these stories of these people that were suffering these unusually large clotting issues. And this is before me being public. I wasn't public at this time. I'm reading those articles and I'm saying to myself, is this what we're talking about? Because I'm seeing this. Normal doctors don't see what I see. I mean, unless you're a vascular surgeon, how would you know? You wouldn't know. And so that's when I'm starting to go like, wait a minute. Some of these papers didn't come out. I didn't find these. I didn't even find. They were given to me by other researchers that were doing a lot of research, like this one, New England Medical Journal, April 16th, 2021, SARS-CoV-2 vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, something's wrong. And then it was in the first picture that I took was in September of 2021. And it was from a gentleman who was in his early to mid 50s. And he supposedly just got free of COVID, right? He was in the hospital with COVID. And apparently they sent him home. The person couldn't hardly breathe. But they sent him home anyway because he didn't have COVID no more, I guess. And then I found out that that person was not only did he die of COVID, but he was vaccinated. And then you started, wait a minute. I thought they said you couldn't get COVID if you were vaccinated. So I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong. And this clot was huge. It was more on the lines of, it was actually bigger than this one. This particular clot that I have here is 19 inches. I mean, you look at it, it's the length of my arm. Okay. And it was longer than this. The clot that I pulled out of that person was bigger than this one. And it was literally almost the length of his leg. Pretty darn close. And of course, you know, I've had a few of these. I mean, this one's not nearly as long, but it's still pretty long. I mean, look, I mean, that's not quite as long, but that's pretty long. But it's not about the length. It's about the color. Blood clots are red. Those dark spots you see are a little bit of some red blood cells, I believe, that got stuck to it. Anyway, so first picture I took was in September of 21. By October, I had a doctor's appointment with my doctor for a just regular checkup. And I don't think I got the flu shot this time, because at this time I'm sitting here thinking, wait, something's not right. And I had 3 pictures on my phone when I went to see him. And I showed him the pictures because I wanted to know, what does he think? What is this? I'm asking my doctor, what is this? He was so blown away by the pictures that he saw. He calls in another doctor to look at him. And it's like, wow, they couldn't explain what it was. All right, fine. Well, the time's going on. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. Then next thing you know, I'm digging in, of course, trying to find out. I find out through some of my basic, just a little bit of research, that deep vein thrombosis and thrombotic events start occurring in people once they get over the age of 60 to 65 years old. What happens is, as we get older, our thrombin count, I guess, goes up or whatever, and we become a little bit more prone to blood clots. So that's interesting, because does that explain why I see it more in the elderly than I do in the younger people? Possibly. I'm continuing to gather more and more stuff. I'm talking to coworkers. I got people that I'm working with. Some of them are saying somebody needs to speak about this. Somebody needs to say something. One of the people at one of the funeral homes gave me the number or the email addresses for a couple of prominent places. And so I reached out to them, and I'm not going to call them out by name because they didn't necessarily take this story and do anything with it or really dig into it. They just thought it was really amazing and it was really weird. They couldn't describe it. And, you know, they had pathologists look at it and stuff like that. They had, I mean, these people knew people. So next thing you know, there's a lady by the name of Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, who is the flight surgeon at Fort Rucker here in Alabama. And she somehow attends a funeral service, and ends up meeting one of the funeral directors. And the funeral director got to realizing who he was talking to, and she had just testified with Senator Ron Johnson. And he says, you need to talk to our embalmer. So he put her in contact with me. I sent her At that time, I had, probably 20 or 30 pictures on my phone. I sent her pictures of what I was seeing. She calls me and we're talking and she's like, oh my God, because she was familiar with soldiers who were suffering blood clots, unusual blood clots, down the arm type of blood clots. And we're talking soldiers. The reason why soldiers were such a big deal, because she was one of the DMED whistleblower, DMED database whistleblower, which dealing with medical stuff. She was seeing these things, and these soldiers are fit. You have to have physical before you can join the army. And just to join the army, you have to go through a physical and pass. So it's not like they're going to take some kid off the block who's just loaded with health issues. No, if you got health issues, they're not going to take you into the military. But even worse is being a flight surgeon on Fort Rucker. A lot of these are pilots, which they go through extra physicals to make sure that they're physically fit before they put them into aircraft and teach them to fly. Because a lot of money goes into that. So when she's seeing weird stuff going on, and then she saw these images, she put me in contact with a lady by the name of Dr. Jane Ruby. And that is how this story first broke, because Dr. Jane Ruby ended up doing an interview. I didn't even know how to do a Zoom interview. I'm not very computer savvy. So I ended up contacting a funeral director that I know who is a lot more computer savvy than I am. And I'm like, do you know how to do the Zoom thing? Because it's supposed to have a camera. And he's like, well, I can do it from my laptop. And so I drove an hour to meet him at the funeral home so that Dr. Jane Ruby could interview me for the first time. And that's what made this story go public. And right after that, within maybe a week, PolitiFact does a hit piece on me, calling me mostly false, calling my story mostly false, which, I know most people would say that's an honor. And I guess it is an honor because it's PolitiFact and almost everything they say isn't true. So that led into so many things down the road as far as looking into things. Dr. Jane Ruby put me into contact with a gentleman by the name of Mike Adams. And he had me send samples to him, and he ended up doing an ICP-MS report on it, which ended up, it made it on a bunch of different things. Epoch Times did a thing where this gentleman by the name of Greg Harrison, I mentioned earlier, he saw that and he contacted me, and he is a polymer chemist. He was a retired polymer chemist. So he understood what ICP-MS was, and he understands some of these different markers and the absence of blood markers. And he was looking at this and he said, wait a minute, this is unusual. This is weird. So he had me send samples overseas, and they got 2 separate labs to do ICP-MS work to replicate and to find out, is Mike Adams was, is it similar? Is it close? And he found out is very, very similar. So Mike Adams was not pulling out some kind of a junk analysis. What his analysis did was what his analysis did, and it was backed up by 2 other analyses from 2 separate labs in 2 separate countries, and they all come to the same similar findings. And that was, it's lacking a lot of the natural blood markers, and that these are abnormal. Something's in there. And then that led them to do what's called a HPLC analysis, which is high performance liquid chromatography. I got it written up on top of my computer because I can't remember all of these things.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is just a little breakdown of the top 21 proteins that they found in it. And what they found was the fibrinogen beta chain was 35% of the clot was made up of fibrinogen beta chain. Then gamma chain at 16%. Hemoglobin subunit beta at 14%, and fibrinogen alpha chain at 4.5%. Now, fibrinogen is fibrin. That's what makes your blood clot. You have to have fibrinogen in your body, otherwise you'll die. You'll bleed to death if you were to get a cut. So it's a natural thing. You got to have it. But normally fibrinogen is in the body. And this is all because of research that we've learned a lot of these things. But anyway, I'm going to just kind of show you. These are paper clips. So, and just imagine these are all different. So let's just say, you know, one's alpha, one's beta, one's gamma. Basically, these units are typically in the blood in a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So you have one of each. And what that analysis showed was that this is 35% beta and 16% of gamma, which alpha should be the most, beta a little bit less, and then gamma even a little bit less from that. But still, relatively, it's still a 1-to-1. So let's just say it's like 1.7%. One is like 1.3%. One's like maybe 1.1% or something. So anyway, but that's what that is. That's what was alarming on that analysis, was they found that this is a lot of fibrinogen and it's not in the right order. It's aberrant. It's aberrant. It is abnormal amounts of fibrin, which then leads us into, they've done histology, and they also did amino acid tests. And then what took us down the road was I say we because I talk to them all the time, but they were concerned of amyloid. And there was a little bit of a debate on whether the amyloid be able to be found in stuff that was formed in formalin. So we had to do what's called a thioflavin T staining, which is a biofluorescent staining under UV light. And the way to do it, which to be the most accurate, would be you'd have to get a fresh sample, not stored in formalin, which is typically what I store these things in, which is normally a tissue fixative that labs use all the time. But it needed to be fresh and rinsed in a grain alcohol and then stored under argon gas, which is an organic gas or whatever, and it prevents oxygen from getting to it to change it. And when I took it up. I ended up driving this sample 3 hours away to a gentleman who shall remain anonymous. But he had the ability to do it. And we ended up doing a group call, even with with Greg Harrison, the scientist who really wanted to do this, because he's like, something tells me it's amyloid. And this thing lit up green like a Christmas tree. So it was definitely showing signs of amyloid, big time. I ended up doing that test one more time. Again, drove another 3 hours with another fresh sample that I had got. And again, it glowed again. So that's 2 for 2. Then we ended up getting in contact with a gentleman by the name of Philip McCarran, who's a scientist in Japan. And I ended up sending him samples. I sent him samples in formalin, and I sent him samples in argon. And he did Raman spectroscopy and RT-QuIC and scanning electron microscopy. And the scanning electron microscopy was amazing because it literally, with the electron microscope, you're able to get down to see the fibrils, the little fibrils of what fibrin does. And it's a knotted mess, basically showing that the fibrin is misfolded. It's wrong. And what is an amyloid? For those people that do not know what amyloid is, an amyloid is nothing more than a misfolded protein. And I have this wonderful little diagram or thing that I did. Yeah, okay, so we have paper clips, right? Now imagine this is a protein. Well, this is a protein too, because this is a paper clip too. But guess what? It's all bent up. Can this whole do the work that this is supposed to do? No, it's wrong. So what happens if you get a whole bunch of these? They start floating around and can end up getting intertwined and getting locked together and creating this jumbled up mess. Instead of having a nice clean chain where it's all nice and beautiful, you end up with this. So not amyloid, amyloid. They're both paper clips or proteins. One protein is totally misfolded and out of shape and out of place. Another one is the way it's supposed to be. And the problem with this amyloid is your body has enzymes that go in and they break these clots back down. If you didn't have fibrinogen in your blood, you would bleed to death. So your body makes clots all the time. But at the same time, your body can't keep those clots. It has to break them down. So you have enzymes that go in and they gobble it up and they take it away. The problem is those enzymes have a hard time because enzymes work like a lock and key. It's almost the same thing as one of these little toys. Each one of these shapes is a protein, and this is the enzyme that eats them up and takes it away. But if they're all folded into a place where they don't fit into any of these holes, now you have a problem with your body not being able to get rid of it. Does that make sense?
That was a great explanation. And I was speaking with you earlier that I had a family member I suspected of having amyloidosis. So I'm fairly familiar with amyloids, and they're attributed also as one of the main causes of Alzheimer's or dementia. And we're seeing a lot of memory issues, and people are calling it early onset Alzheimer's and dementia at this point. So I wonder how much this is tied in together. What was the metals content? Did you mention, was it chromium? Was there some metal that you found quite a bit of?
Again, I'm not the big person I'm not a scientist.
That's fine. So it wasn't.
The thing that got his attention was the tin element. The tin was what got Greg's antennas up. So wait a minute, because he works with polymers, and he's, like I said, he's a polymer chemist, and he worked with PVC, and he could explain why the tin level maybe is higher over here, because they use tin as a catalyst in our PVC pipes. So we are constantly exposed to tin. And so our levels of tin might be higher than it is over in Australia or in New Zealand or in UK or wherever. It just depends on, the pipes, because even though, they use it people think that the chemicals and the things that are made of in those pipes, as water goes through it, it is literally eroding the wall away slightly. Yes. It's so small, you don't even notice it, but it's there. And so a lot of times we do consume chemicals or elements, tin, whatever, in our food, in our water, and our drink. It's lead. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. And there's no way to hide from it. But anyway, the tin got his attention. But even though the tin didn't pan out to be quite the smoking gun that he was looking for, because it got his attention, it led us into to do more analysis, more studies, more tests that is taken and is waking them up to all kinds of amazing things. And like with one of the things that Dr. McCarran discovered in Japan when he looked at these is we're looking at amyloid. Is definitely amyloid, but it could potentially be prion-like. We're not saying it's a prion, but it's prion-like. You can take a cupid zirconia and it's diamond-like. It looks like a diamond, but it's not a diamond. But, sometimes if you didn't know what you were looking at, you would think it was. So it's dangerous. I mean, it's kind of scary stuff, especially when you start going down prion thing because, again, in the beginning, I didn't know what amyloid was. I had to look it up. I don't know anything about prion. I was like, what's prion? What's the difference between prion and amyloid? Well, here's the thing. Not all amyloids are prions, but all prions are amyloids. So they are related.
And I think the main connection people would make with prions would be mad cow disease.
Mad cow. Yes. Yes, mad cow disease. And that's kind of scary stuff. And the problem that we have is this amyloid proteins, these things. And I in the very beginning, and I argued with some of these doctors on one of the calls with Dr. Bhakti and Dr. Burkhart and some of these other doctors. This was early on in 2022. There's this one doctor saying these have to be postmortem. And I argued with them. And almost every mortician that I talked to would disagree with that man, because how is that possible? How could this form after the person dies and be of this kind of strength, be this strong? And this is something that I've learned since then. And I do believe now that it is possible that these are forming post-mortem. But either way, this substance is floating around in the body. And the problem with having amyloids floating around in your bloodstream is you don't know where they're going to land. What if they get hung up in the brain? You got Alzheimer's, dementia. What if they get hung up in a liver or in a kidney? You have kidney disease, you have liver disease. What if it ends up going into all kinds? Who knows where it goes? Wherever this stuff goes, is this potentially the reason why there are so many variations of sickness and problems that people are having? I'm just asking a question. I'm not saying 100% it is. I'm not a pathologist. I'm not a doctor. But these are my observations, and I'm seeing it, and it's a lot, and it's not rare. And remember I said in the very beginning when I first saw it, I didn't think much of it because you sometimes run into something that you're not used to seeing. But when it goes and becomes something that you see almost 50% of the time, or sometimes more than 50% of the time, this is not rare. And how is it for those people that want to be naysayers? How is it that I, an embalmer that started in 2001, gets all the way to 2020, and I don't remember seeing stuff like this? And now I see this since 2021, probably 50% of the time.
Has the incidence decreased at all?
It seems like it recently that it has. But then again, I had two yesterday that I did, and both of them had it. One was older, one was younger than me. So I don't get it. I don't know why. I have seen these clots in a child. It doesn't seem to matter. Like in the documentary, what was alarming to me was it didn't seem to matter what these people died of. What I was finding was this similarity, this thing that is in a lot of people. And is it that the blood, this is one of the things I noticed. There was something wrong with the blood. The blood changed. The blood changed, and it changed quickly. The blood doesn't act like it used to. But guess what? That was 2021. We're in 2026. That's 5 years ago. So unfortunately, this is the new normal. There's nothing new here. And there are people that are in my field that are young in this profession. This is normal to them. There's nothing abnormal here.
That's the scary part, is that I call the pre-COVID times the before times. And we've got so many children now that see the conditions that we're living through these days as normal. And of course, that's, I think, one of the goals of targeting the older community is to wipe out the memories and the idea that life could be different than it is now. I have a few questions for you. Some are mine, some are from our viewers. number one, and I believe you stated this, that you didn't see these clots from COVID so much. You saw them after the vaccine started rolling out.
After the vaccine, yes.
Right.
And
So,
that paper that I showed you earlier, the one that came out, it was a preprint, and they said that the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein induces abnormal inflammatory blood clots. That paper right there, that to me is the smoking gun. And the reason is because they admit that the spike protein induces abnormal blood clotting. If we know that the spike protein is in the virus, then yes, you can get clotting from the COVID itself. Well, then what makes the difference between that and these? The mRNA vaccine.
There you go.
Makes your body create the spike protein that induces abnormal clotting. Why can't people put that together? It just boggles my mind.
Okay. You talked about enzymes, and on my list of questions, and also from someone in the chat, was the question, what do you think about possible serrapeptase, lumbrokinase, nattokinase, EDTA, NAC? What do you think about those types of things? I noticed that the gentleman in Japan, is it McCarran, that you sent the samples to? Does he still accept samples? And it looked like he offered some sort of remedy, but I looked on his website and I wasn't clear what he was offering. So, and this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. Richard's not a doctor. Ashley's not a doctor. And so this is just speculating and opinions here. So what do you think about possible enzyme therapies or NAC or EDTA, et cetera?
I can tell you that there are people that are part of this. They believed 100% in quercetin, NAC, vitamin C, vitamin D, glutathione, all that kind of stuff, lumbrokinase. All of these things can help. Here's Kevin McCarran doesn't think that any of these things are going to help necessarily. But, it's better. I mean, if you're worried and you feel like you're having issues, sometimes it's better than nothing. I'm not a doctor, so I can't prescribe you anything. The Peter McCullough protocol, I love Dr. Peter McCullough, and I'm 100% behind him, and he's doing the best that he can to try to help people. Now, what Kevin McCarran, if I'm not mistaken, is called plasmapheresis. Now, plasmapheresis is where they basically it's like they're filtering your plasma from your body. And guess what? Guess where the fibrinogen, alpha, beta, and gamma, guess where that stuff is?
In your plasma?
It's in your plasma.
Yeah.
It's in the liquid portion of your plasma. The red stuff are your red blood cells. That's why the blood is so red. But what keeps it a fluid is the plasma. And this is where I'm now believing that these clots are forming post-mortem as well as antemortem. It's in the plasma. And what's scary about the plasma is your red blood cells go throughout your circulatory system. Your plasma goes outside of it as well.
It's in your lymph.
It's in your lymph. Exactly. And this is dangerous, but that's where the fibrinogen is. That's where your alpha, beta, gamma chains are. And if you've got misfolded fibrinogen, right? That plasmapheresis is supposed to help capture that stuff. And then it puts the clean plasma back into your body. Now, the problem that they might have, and is that is not an inexpensive treatment. And I don't know where you would go to do it. I know Kevin McCarran has a place in Japan that's doing it. But it seems like it might be a best option. Plus, he's doing some stem cell stuff as well. But there are other people that I know, Karen and Ashley. I know there are people amazing people that are, amazing wealthy people. Good thing for some wealthy people, because you need people that have money to do some of these things. They're working on therapeutics. They're working on trying to find things that will help people. Because let's face it, I know most people aren't going out and jumping out there getting the next vaccine. And that's why I feel like we're winning this war. Because if you look at the vaccine uptake, it's dropped dramatically. People are starting to question all vaccines at this point. Where are the mandates? They're pretty much gone. Even if they're on the books, they're not being enforced. You see what I'm saying? We're winning this war.
Well, the thing is, you've got the technology, the mRNA technology moving into our food sources now.
Yep.
And then also into the children's vaccine. So, there are still major concerns about that.
You mentioned earlier that you had a person that was talking to you guys about the stillbirths.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you, I went up towards Birmingham to meet a family whose dad died, and they wanted to see if he had blood clots. And luckily they found a funeral home that would do it and would be honest with them. And they found it. They found one. So I went up there to bring a vial with some formalin so they could preserve it. But when I was up there and I was talking to the funeral director, an embalmer, which I went to school with him, he was saying he had never seen so many fetal deaths in his 20 years as he was seeing. Now that was a couple years ago. So I mean, that's a few years ago now. And I was like, yeah, I know, me too. And it's true. We are seeing the fetal demises. When I was an apprentice, I remember, because it's one of those things that happens. Sometimes people have a miscarriage, and sometimes it has happened. It's not the first time. It's not something that's never happened. But back when, my earlier days, it was rare. It was a rare thing to see. We would see it. Yeah, we would see, a couple a year maybe, here or there. But I had a period recently, just right after Thanksgiving, where I know of six. That's within a 2-week period. When I used to maybe see one or, six would be pushing it for a whole year. Typically we'd only see a few babies or a few infant fatality type things. Not saying it doesn't ever happen. But that's one. So the depopulation thing, and this is my concern is this, and it'll be interesting to see. I could be totally wrong. It's my speculation. What's going to happen in 27 after they pushed out the mandates? Are the kindergarten classes going to have a sudden decrease, even if it's only 10%?
They already are. They already are having enrollment dropping. In the little town I grew up in, about 10,000 people, they're already having to cut back on teachers in the lower grades. And I have someone in my family who works in OBGYN delivery, and she's made comments about, we've had so many hemorrhaging mothers lately, and didn't really seem to put it together. And I wasn't going to go there with her, and then I've heard, or I've seen reports that placentas are having calcification or issues with placentas not being able to carry full-term pregnancy. And then we've got more than ever pregnant mothers being encouraged to take, I believe it's up to 4 vaccinations now during pregnancy. And when I was becoming a mom, you did not, nobody would dare suggest that you have a vaccination when you were pregnant. I mean, that was just unspeakable. But now, you're very much encouraged to do that. So I think that that's a factor also.
I think
yeah. So I want to ask Ashley if she's got any questions. We're at about an hour and 45 minutes. So I think we should probably wrap it up pretty soon. So I want to give you a chance to talk about anything you'd like to talk about, Richard, that we haven't mentioned, for Ashley to finish up any questions she may have.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and I did want to add anecdotally that one of my clients during this time was also working in emergency OB, and he also was not putting it together that they had an increase in not only the deaths of babies and the occasional losing of the mother as well, but emergency hysterectomies, which I think is such a huge ordeal. Like, it's bad enough to have an emergency cesarean, which is very hard on the mother and the baby, but then to have an emergency hysterectomy is very, very disturbing because the mother has no input, but it was deemed that she would potentially die if this was not done. So he also relayed that just anecdotally. But a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about, Richard, is we have seen, you're talking about the reduction in people or the uptake of the vaccine. However, I know many people in my life who probably have 6 or 7 of these things by now. And I was wondering if you had noticed, or, and I know some of this is just your own detective work and conversations with the family members, but of a worsening of the clotting based on the number of these shots that people were taking, or if you had done any of the digging with these family members to look at batch specifics, because that was one of the things that we heard a lot about during this time was, the website, how bad is my batch? And there were some associations that some batches were worse than others. So I was just curious around your experience and thoughts around that.
Yeah, because I'm a trade embalmer, I rarely ever get to speak to family members directly. But I do hear from funeral directors, this, that, and the other. I do believe that there were different batches. And I do believe that the studies that we're talking about, how bad is my batch and the things, that is why not everybody had an issue. But I think there might be some other things. And that is, everybody's biology is a little bit different. And maybe it's just possible. There are some blood type people. There are some people that are just, they have a makeup in their body that they're just not going to be affected by it. This whatever it is that they're doing. So, because not everybody's allergic to peanut butter, right? Everybody don't like getting, most people don't like getting stung by a bee, but even the bee sting, some people are way more allergic than others. Some people it's a little red mark, and some people it's like an ouch, and some people it puts them in the hospital, and some people it kills them. So I think everybody's biology is a little different. So I know there are a handful of people that are out there that are getting these shots, but I think I heard Peter McCullough say that the COVID vaccine is down to like maybe around 10%. We went from 80% down to 10%. That is a huge reduction, and it's not going the other direction. You got people that are continually, and I've known people that were like, oh, it's going to be fine. They're going to go ahead. And then they get it, and then they have chest issues, and they're starting to have heart palpitations. And now they're like, oh, I'm not going to get any more of those shots. When they were warned about these things, but they weren't going to listen to me because I'm not a doctor. I get it. Fine. Don't listen to me. You do what you want to do. My whole thing with this stuff was nobody should have been forced to get an experimental mRNA gene therapy vaccine in the first place. Nobody should have been coerced. It's the shot or your job. It's the shot or you're not going to get a surgery, or you're not going to end up going into a restaurant or what. None of that. All of that was wrong. That was a freedom issue. No, since when do we sit there and, oh, well, you drink alcohol, we're not going to treat you at the hospital. Or you smoke cigarettes, we're not going to treat you at the hospital. Or you did drugs, we're not going to take care of you at the hospital. And now all of a sudden, if you're not vaccinated, you should die wheezy. Isn't that what that comedian person said on the Tonight Show or whatever it was he was on?
Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, I mean, these people, I mean, it's insane. But I mean, the whole thing was a mess. Nobody should have been coerced. The Nuremberg Code was thrown out the window. Nobody followed it. Everybody had to do this. And now there's people getting sick. Turbo cancers, that's real stuff. Dr. James Thorpe, he's an OBGYN specialist. I mean, I got to meet him, and he was the one, when he saw these clots, he's like, he's like, I think I know what that is. It's a decidual cast, a pseudo decidual cast, which is an abnormality thing that happens with women, which was extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But for whatever reason, it kind of came around when the vaccines came out. More and more women were having them, more and more reports of them. OBGYN doctors that have never seen it in their career, all of a sudden seeing 2 or 3 cases in their clinic. That's weird. I know correlation doesn't mean causation, but there's too much stuff going on there. But yeah, I don't think everybody's going to be affected the same. I really don't. I think there are some people, I think there might be something to do with the blood type. There might be something to do with somebody's genetics. I don't know. But I do believe, I should say, instead of I know, I believe, and it's through tons of, not just me researching, but me being a part of meetings and seeing the research and digging into things and speaking with people, that this was a bioweapon. The COVID was a bioweapon, and the daggum vaccine is a bioweapon, and it's been successfully deployed, and I don't think anybody is safe. We're all going to be exposed to the spike protein, whether it's through shedding, whether it's through another viral vector, a mutation or whatever. We're all at risk, and which leads to where the most important thing, I think, people say, well, what do I need to do? I say you need to get right with your maker. There is a spiritual war going on, and this war is not about flesh and blood, even though the flesh and blood is affected, because we are going to suffer the consequences. It talks about in Luke 21, pestilences and plagues and wars and rumors of war. All these things are going to happen. All these things will happen, and we're not going to necessarily stop it. So when you find yourself like me, like myself, I've kind of come to the point that I speak about these things when I'm asked. I don't seek interviews. I don't seek to go out there to do all this stuff, and I can't stop it. I can't stop. If we are living in God's prophetic times, nothing is going to change it. All you can do is take care of you, and that is get right with God. Seek the truth and God. I would like to say seek God in the truth, but a lot of people don't want to believe in God. And if you don't believe in God, hey, God bless you. All right. I mean, I'm not going to be mad at you. But if you seek the truth, my hope is that you'll find God in seeking truth. And the other one I say a lot of times is be kind. Who hates a kind person? Who has a problem with somebody coming up and doing a kind gesture or saying something nice? And then the last thing I put on my on a lot of my posts, when I do post, is strive to do what's right. There's a friend of mine, Dr. David Jernigan, who I used to write, try to do what is right. And he told me, he's like, I hate that word try. It's an easy way out. And I was like, you know what? You're kind of right. And David Jernigan has a clinic called the Biologic Center in Tennessee. And he helps people with a lot of these things, with interesting therapies. He helps people with all kinds of issues. So I change it to strive to do what is right. And I think strive is a good thing, because we all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. Nobody has earned their way into the kingdom of heaven. If you think you've earned your way to the kingdom of heaven, I think you got to look in the mirror, because we got a big problem. The only reason we get there is because of his love and his grace to us, for us. And we just need to turn. We just need to turn to God and repent. And we need to repent of our sorceries, which some people would say in Revelations, that's pharmaceuticals. But at the same time, when I got a headache, I take ibuprofen because it helps. So I'm not totally anti-pharma, but I am anti-vaccine now at this point. Definitely, I think they need to change it to where they have liability. Take away that liability protection from them. If they were to become liable for the harms that they caused, they would work harder to provide a safe product. Don't you think?
I would think so. I would think so. And there's a move afoot to make pesticides immune, as the vaccine industry has been. That was beautifully said. Very well put. We're big on the golden rule around here. One of my dad's favorite sayings was "kill them with kindness," and I try to stick by that. I try to treat other people as I would like to be treated, and kind of lead with love. And we talk about that a lot here. There was one question one of our viewers, Deb, had. Ashley, let me know if I've got this correct. She's wondering if you've seen a move or people who were trying to harvest organs for profit during the COVID era.
I am okay. So the organ harvesting. Oh, that is a touchy subject for me. I am not a fan of it anymore. I used to be. I'm not a fan of it. There's a lot of talk about people going out there and just stealing organs and stuff like that. It's not how that works. We don't have people coming in and stealing the thing. However, the organ banks are and have become very aggressive, and where there's now policies that are put out to where the hospital cannot release the body to the funeral home without first going through them. So yes, they're pushing for organ harvesting, but it's not the funeral home doing it. The funeral home doesn't want to do it. The way they're harvesting the bodies, if people would see what I see, you wouldn't harvest. You would take donor off of your ID. I know I have, and
I did.
I don't want my body mutilated the way they do. And what's sad is they tell the family members, "Oh, everything's going to be fine," and for the most part, we as embalmers do our best to make it fine. But a lot of times they mutilate the body is so bad that, we're doing everything we can in the back at the funeral home to try to make sure that the body's not leaking all over the casket, that you don't see all of the gore that actually took place. And we try to make the body look as presentable as possible. But so for people that want to know, if you donate your body for organ harvest, most of the time you're talking long bones. Basically, they'll take the arm from the upper arm to the elbow, and they used to take the femur bone all the way down to the ankle. And but now it's worse than that. Now they're taking the entire pelvis. So imagine if nobody has a pelvis, what that does to their shape. It makes them a blob. But the worst one of them all, and this is something that they started a few years ago, and this is one of the reasons why I dread it nowadays, is they're doing skin. They're removing the skin. And when I mean they're removing the skin, back in the older days when I was younger in the business, they would take a thin layer of the upper dermis, a thin layer. Like it would kind of take what looked kind of like a cheese grater and just take a nice thin sheet. People know of that when they have like skin grafts and stuff. They do that. But now they're literally taking the skin off of people's backs. And I mean, all of it. There's no skin at all on their entire backside.
What are they doing with the bones and the skin?
I can't tell you. I don't know. But it's awful. It's awful as a mortician because there's no way to sew it up, because it's literally from shoulder blade to shoulder blade all the way down to the buttocks. And then they even take the skin off the back of the upper thigh. And I'm not talking just this thin layer. I'm talking down to the muscle. You can see the muscles, everything. It's all gone. And I know we probably shouldn't have gone there because, the organ companies are going to be pissed that I said something like this.
No, it's good to know. Thank you.
People have a right to know. They don't tell people this. And then they sit there and they're literally trying to coerce these family members. They'll call the family members practically begging them, oh, so you could save so many people's lives and blah, blah, blah. Now, when it comes to the organs, now we're talking like heart and lungs, okay? Those, a lot of times, this is one thing, something that a lot of people don't understand. If you're going to go ahead and donate, let's say the heart, some of the organs, that person's actually kept kind of on life support until they remove the organ and then they're taken off. And so that kind of throws people. Sometimes they'll see on the death certificate, well, that's not when they died. They died on this day. No, they actually died when they actually shut the machine off.
Right.
And so that it throws people it's like, you mean they were alive when you were doing this?
Yeah.
People don't realize that. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they want to get those organs while they're still vital and they're still pumping and they do whatever they got to do. And listen, I'm not as opposed to that. But there, because it's not like they're mutilating the body terribly. And when you're talking about a heart transplant, you literally could be saving somebody's life or kidneys or, lung, whatever. It makes my job rough, but when they're taking the long bones and skin off people's backs, now I'm totally okay with the eye donation. That's nothing major. And I know the corneas do help a lot of people with corneal transplants. They're able to see because of those transplants. So, but most of the time a family would never, we can fix that super easy. It's those long bone donors and those tissue donors that are awful. And if people knew what they were going to do to you, if you saw, I had threatened, I've talked to people, I've threatened posting pictures of what they do to people just so people can have a right to know. And I'd probably get in big trouble, but there's a big part of me who wants to.
That's a big piece of information there. I'm shocked. I thought I was pretty well aware of most of this, but I did not know that.
Nobody knows anything until you know.
Right. And there was a report not too long ago that came out, and RFK Jr. talked about it, that a sizable percentage of organ donors were actually still conscious or showed pain or were crying tears at the point where the organ harvesting was about to begin. And there were doctors and nurses that refused to participate. And it was a big scandal not all that long ago, 2 or 3 months ago.
Yep, I understand. I've seen those reports, and it's kind of it's rough. It's rough. I understand the concept of saving somebody's life. I understand giving somebody a second chance of life by, if you're dying, I get it. But at the same time, I'm not talking about those, like when you're dealing with like the heart and stuff. Yes. They're kept on life support. I didn't know that until I was in the business. I was like, whoa, what? Really? Most people don't know. But the way the organ harvesting thing is, and yes, there is an uptake. Yes, they're pushing for it. They're making it. Now, granted, a lot of the families still will say no. They'll still tell the organ company, no, my loved one's been through enough. You're not cutting on them no more. And that's a nice way to look at it. They're just not going to cut on them anymore. Just let them rest in peace.
Okay. Ashley, do you have any final questions or remarks? And then we'll have Richard let us know where he can be found if he so desires.
Well, I think that we've had a really good, comprehensive conversation. There's a lot of other stuff that I would like to get into, but I think we're at a good stopping point for today. And I just want to say thank you so much. The chat was really interested in what you had to say today, Richard, and people even well-versed on, a lot of the things with COVID and the clots and things like that felt like they learned a lot. So I really appreciate your time and all of this great wisdom that you have imparted on us. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
It has been wonderful. So Richard, is there anywhere if people want to get in touch with you, and that's completely up to you. If you would like to be left alone, that's perfectly fine as well.
Well, I have an X account that has a lot of supposedly people follow, but I don't post much on there because X has become so toxic. I have a Facebook account as well, but you know, I don't always post things there either, because I've gotten to where now the censorship is so bad that, you know, I just don't throw myself up as a target anymore. I've already been, you know, I've never been monetized. That's one thing that's interesting. We didn't talk about this. I've had people ask me to write a book. Many people, like my friend Laura Kasner, who has Clotastrophe. Now, Clotastrophe is a Substack, and she works with Tom Havlin and doing the surveys to show that I'm not the only embalmer seeing this. You're looking at 70-80% of the embalmers are acknowledging the same problem. But Laura Kasner has a Substack called Clotastrophe, and I will send her some pictures periodically, and she posts them on her Substack on a little note, just to be a thing to let people know, hey, it's still happening. This hasn't gone away. And so she's trying to, you know, keep the awareness going. Yeah, they can contact me there. I've had a number of people contact me that turn out to be, I don't know what they are, but I have to delete them. They'll be like, they'll sit there like, oh yeah, the next thing you know, they're asking for money or sending some kind of strange pictures that probably ought not to be sent over the internet. But, you know, so you just gotta, you know, that's just, I guess that's part of it. When you're on social media, you get bombarded with who knows what, especially if you're, I guess, a public figure. The nice thing about X is you don't get to choose. People either follow you or you don't. You don't get to do anything. Now, if they start acting a fool on there, you can block them eventually. But Facebook, you have to become friends. And I quit accepting friend requests a lot of times on Facebook because I never know who I'm getting. And sometimes I get some of those people that they're out there and then they're harassing people that are on my Facebook, and it's just kind of dangerous. So yeah, I mean, people can contact me there if they want to. They can, you know, you have my email address. They can email me if they wanted to, but I don't check my emails very often. It's one of my downfalls. I have email.
Me too. I'm not very good at that.
Not very good. I'll look like when I knew you guys were going to send an email to the link, I knew to look at my email today. But there are times I go weeks and there'll be thousands of emails and I'm not going through them all. I'm just not. I'm done. I kind of look at it like God is in control. Everything is going to be good. There's a movie called Don't Look Up. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. It is awesome. Don't Look Up. And the world is where it's supposed to be. Everything is supposed to be as planned. Nobody can take away God's plan. If we are living in the last days, there ain't nothing you or I or anybody can do. We can pray about it. Maybe our prayers will go up if enough of us pray, and God will delay it. But if it is set time, it's his set time. And if I feel like we're approaching that time now. So love God. Try not to be, strive to do what's right. Try to be good. But don't think you're going to be perfect, because you're not. And don't think you're bigger than you are, because you're not. God is bigger than all of us. And he loves us so much that he gave his only begotten son so that whoever believes in him can have everlasting life. And for those of you that don't believe that, I pray for you, and I pray that God will reveal himself to you as well. Amen.
Amen. Ashley, you want to shout out the chat real quick and plug our website if you'd like to?
Yes, I sure will. And Jason may correct me on this, but I think he's pulling it up right now. So while he does that, I'm going to shout out our chat. We had a really busy, active chat today. It was great to see everyone. We had Octa1, Hiker Emoji, Nostradamus, Deb, Bride B. Mac, I'm Marty, Ronnie Omelets, Yona, Ghost Art, LT, Oracle of Truth, Guard Goldsmith, Ricky from Anything is Possible, Robin Lee, Geesebusters, Sweets, Will Tabox, Doc Spoiler, Melanie, Birdhouse Blues, Tony Ty, RB Ham, Dad Guy 24, Dakota Feather, who I think is new to us, so welcome, Heather, Brandon Bennett, Tom Cooper, Misfit 1904, our friend Wheezy, What is Truth, Greg Hume, 121, Narrow Way, Narrow Gate, which is our friend Levi, Ray K, 333, our friend Ray, Radio Sack, Nature Boy Dave, Audie MMR, and A Dingo Ate Me Baby. So thank you to everybody. It was really busy today. Good to see everybody.
It was wonderful. And I'd like to say, while I have the opportunity, that Angry Tiger's Den on Rumble, does a music show every Saturday night at 8:30 Eastern. He does a mix for 15-20 minutes, and then he takes requests. So please join us Saturday, which is tonight, 8:30 Eastern, for a lot of fun. No talking news or anything. It's just music and a good time at 8:30 on Angry Tiger's Den channel. So I hope to see you there. I know Geesebusters and I will be there with our requests. So did you want to, if we got our website, are we going to skip that for today?
Yeah, Jason has it pulled up. I'll just add it to, go ahead, Jay.
I'll jump in. I know I'm sick, but yeah, here's our website, thenightsofthestorm.com. Then you go over here to our friends. So if you look at the top, you got all these little tabs or whatever. So our friends, and there were some people I just really wanted to mention that they came out in the chat today, and they have their own podcast. So please go check them out. And you can find them over here on our website. We got Angry Tiger, as Karen was mentioning. We've got, we of course got America Unplugged that comes on before us, Gorilla Underground, all this stuff. But I don't have Wheezy on here, but Dave was in the chat. The Third Rail podcast, check that out. He does his shows on Friday nights. Doc Rock was in the chat. So yeah, Ricky, Anything is Possible, was in the chat. So these people support us. Let's support these people. What do you mean by these people, right? And then the schedule, and this is where it's awesome, is we kind of got a TV guide. So if you like to get in, do the live chat, like that's what we thrive off of here, is the interaction with whoever the guest is or whatever the topic is and the chat. So come on into the live chats, and we have kind of a TV guide here where you can see when they play and kind of keep on top of it. But that's all I have. And great job, ladies. Thank you, Richard, so much. It was great meeting you. I'm going to go ahead and pop out now.
Okay. And RB Ham, who's in the chat, I was on RB's show last Saturday night. He has Beyond the Pale. I believe it's 5:00 on Saturday evenings Eastern. And that's on Rumble, Beyond the Pale. And he's on with John Jeffries quite often. So it's so great to see everybody in chat. We appreciate you all so much for coming back week after week after week. Richard, it was an absolute honor and pleasure to meet you. And I so appreciate that, the spirit that you carry in your heart and the light that, I mean, you're just a beautiful person. And I appreciate the work that you do in the world, being one of God's emissaries, because I think that's what we're here for. That's the point of being here. And so everybody listening now and into the future, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you have a good week. And with that, I will say, keep your sword sharp, keep your armor tight, and shine your light. Thank you, everybody.